Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special bonus episode of the Attractions Podcast. I'm here hosting by myself. Carly is off today, and if you watched earlier, our publisher Matt joined us, but he has left me solo. But I am very lucky to be able to do this interview with Savannah Boan, who is the ambassador from Gatorland, a radio personality, an amazing person with incredible stories to tell, and we are going to get into them in just a second. Before we start, I'm going to say hi to some folks who are in the comments. Magic City Mayhem, I believe that's Mikey. I think you might know him. He's jumping in to say hi. Kayla Pugh says, "Hey, Savannah." And
Hey,
Lisa
Kayla.
Robinson also says, "Yay for Savannah." I know you get some fans out there, and I can see them signing in right now. So I am going to hide Savannah backstage for a second so I can give her a big introduction.
Woo!
And we are going to start recording this podcast in 3, 2.
Please lower your head and watch your step while boarding.
Welcome to the Attractions Podcast. You are all clear for dispatch. Have fun.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special edition, a bonus episode of the Attractions Podcast. I am your host, Seth. Carly is off today, but I am here with a bonus interview with someone who is a long-standing supporter and member of the Florida theme park and entertainment community. She's a radio personality, a performer, an ambassador for wildlife, and a key member of the Gatorland team. And I am very thrilled to be able to introduce Savannah Boan. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
Big
me.
applause.
Super excited to be here.
Big applause. If you do not already know Savannah, I am going to kick this off by reading just a little bit of her bio to give
That's
you.
gonna take you a long time.
I'm going to read the Cliff Notes version because this is an impressive bio. But she is one of Florida's most passionate and influential voices for the protection of alligators, crocodiles, and Florida wildlife, and a leading crocodilian advocate within the global wildlife conservation community. She is the Crocodilian Enrichment Coordinator at Gatorland in Orlando, Florida, which is, of course, the alligator capital of the world.
Yes.
She is the International Ambassador for Gatorland Global Conservation since 2018. And she is a loving, fearless, platinum blonde force to be reckoned with, and the foremost female at the park who is hands-on with some of the biggest reptiles in the planet. But I first came to know her as a member of the Monsters on 104.1. She has more than 25 years entertainment experience on radio and live performance. She is the queen of the Gators, and it is so great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. And that's a great introduction. Your introductions are known the world over. Like your introductions are amazing.
Well, I gave Carlos a big glow up when he came. We gave him a big introduction, and you deserve no less.
Well, thank you.
We have so much that you have done and are doing for us to talk about. I want to just start back, turn the clock way back to the 1990s. I know you can tell. I know you don't look like you were around in the 90s. You can tell from my gray hair that I was. But when I first moved to town, I started listening to 104.1 and discovered what at the time was called the Russ and Bo Show, and later turned into the Monsters in the midday and then in the morning. And you were a key member of that team that kept me entertained on my long car rides to and from Universal. And I just want to start get a little bit of idea of how you how you survived that experience, because you were a woman surrounded by a bunch of, I won't even say men, by a bunch of boys, and you were often emotionally and physically kind of the butt of bits. You went through, a lot of stuff on air. Did that prepare you for working with giant alligators and crocodiles
Well,
in your job now?
Well, I think even before that, Seth, and thank you again for having me and thank you for that great introduction. So I grew up with two brothers and a dad and a very, very, very male dominated family.
Mm-hmm.
And when in leaving my little hometown in South Carolina, like my dad, like my grandfather did, I joined the Marine Corps. So that's another step in the pretty much male dominated sort of industry. Like the Marine Corps definitely has a lot more men than women, but I was up to the task. And so I think my whole life just prepared me for what I'm doing right now.
And obviously you are part of the Gatorland team, but you have been here in Orlando for a long time.
Yes.
And we are a theme park, we're attractions podcast. So before going to work for Gatorland, what kind of relationship or experiences did you have around the theme parks? Were you a fan of going to theme parks? Did you have any favorite attractions or rides?
Well, I always loved the theme parks, like all the theme parks. I remember I used to go to Wet n Wild all the time. That was one of my favorite. Isn't that what it was called? Wet n Wild?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Wet n Wild, when they would do like Florida residence specials, I love going there. Of course, I love going to Disney. Like anytime you get to go to Disney, like it's just a breathtaking sort of experience. I love Universal. Like I on my bucket list right now is Peppa Pig Land, which I haven't been to yet. And then Legoland, of course. I just feel like I've loved. I'll tell you, top secret, when I was 16 years old, I ran away to Orlando on a Greyhound bus so I could go to Disney and I could be Cinderella, which I'm sure little girls from all around the world do the same thing. But first of all, I was 16. Second, I was way too tall to be Cinderella and ended up having to go all the way back home on the same Greyhound bus from Orlando.
That's an amazing story. So you were destined to be a princess in a theme park. You just didn't necessarily think it would be a princess of gators.
I don't think Gatorland had a princess then, but I was happy to create that role and take it over as swiftly as I created it.
Well, let's turn the clock back. What was your first experience with reptiles? And did you go into Gatorland? I understand that back in the day, when you were out in California, you worked at a reptile zoo. So that kind of prepared you.
So I went to California. My son at the time was skateboarding a lot and we were living in Cocoa Beach and he wanted to do that more professionally. So Southern California is the place to do that. So we went there. I thought I had a radio job lined up when I got there, but that fell through. And then once that fell through, I was just scrounging around trying to find any job. Found a job at a reptile zoo in California. And as I was there over time, kind of realizing, well, this is the thing that I love. Like I always used to catch snakes when I was a little girl. I always used to catch lizards, anything that moved, like I would catch it and try to study it in my own childlike way of studying it. Lots and lots and lots of pet frogs. So being in that reptile zoo kind of made me, and I always loved Gatorland. Like I always loved Gatorland. And I remember the first time I was ever at Gatorland, like I remember all of it and thinking like, one day I'll get to work at this park and that'll be the day that I made it. So while I was in California working at this reptile zoo, I was applying to Gatorland the whole time. Like, I want to come home. I want to work for Gatorland. I want to come home. I want to work for Gatorland. So finally it all kind of merged together and I got the job I wanted. That was my I have arrived moment for sure.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad they finally listened and hired you. So
Yeah, it was like 7 years I was applying, if you want to know the
keep
truth.
knocking
So
on that door.
yeah,
Wow.
and then once they gave me a little crack in the door, because they only hired me part-time in the beginning, I just kicked the door down and just pushed on through there. And now I think Gatorland is thriving, doing better than it's probably ever done in the history of the park that's been there for 75 years, which
Mm.
also is, again, just like a miracle to stay afloat for that many years as a family-owned business.
So talk to us about some of the projects that you've been involved in, some of the things you've done with Gatorland that you're most proud of.
So when you say, like, for those of you who don't know, when you say like crocodilian enrichment, right?
Mm.
That's basically, I have to try to think of games, activities, and things like that for crocodiles and alligators to
Okay.
play, right? If you
Because
believe
a
science.
bored reptile is a dangerous reptile, right?
Well, I mean,
You want to keep them happy. You don't want these guys to be annoyed, right?
well, we like to make sure that there are different things coming in and out that would be like normally if an alligator or crocodile lives in a big lake, like there are going to be different things like boats will come through, or like different kind of fishermen and stuff like that. So we like to keep their minds sharp, like give their bodies something to do, so they're not just laying around bored all the time. Even though alligators and crocodiles do like to kind of just lay around, we like to give them stuff to do that we think, or they seem to enjoy being a part of.
Okay, so give me an example of a crocodile game or activity that you've helped come up with that's people might be surprised by.
So in the deep summertime, right, we get these 55-gallon drums, right? And then in the drum, I put different kinds of things like fish, red meat, chicken, little bit of blood that may be left over, maybe some feral hog meat, and I freeze it in this gigantic thing. And then once it's frozen, we float it out into the lake, right?
Mm.
So as it's in the lake water, it starts to sort of melt, and then the crocodiles and alligators can have their first, like, imagine the first time you ever tasted ice cream, or imagine the first time you ever tasted ice. So a crocodile is never going to come into contact with ice. So they get to go up, and then their sensors get to feel this new feeling that they've never had before. And at the same time, they get a treat from it. So that's just one of the things. Like sometimes we give them fruits, like, so they're generally meat eaters, but they also eat some vegetation, or the vegetation that's in the meat that they eat. And so every Halloween, we give them pumpkins.
I was going to ask about the pumpkins. Do they really like pumpkins, or is it just for the photo op?
It depends. So the Nile crocodiles, we found, far and away will eat the entire pumpkin. They love it. They'll come back for more. They love the pumpkins.
Okay.
And so alligators, some of them like it and some of them don't. Saltwater crocodiles, other kinds of crocodiles don't necessarily like it. Every now and then a Cuban crocodile will eat it. But, it's just their taste buds, and it depends on what they like. But the Nile crocodiles love the pumpkins. They eat the whole thing every year.
Wow. That sounds absolutely delicious.
And pumpkins are a natural dewormer. So all wildlife eats pumpkins if there are pumpkins around. So if there were any sort of parasites or any sort of worms, which I'm sure we don't have, but it would help them purge all of that. That's why wolves and squirrels and all those animals eat pumpkin.
Interesting. Wow. I'm sure that you have learned way more about crocodiles and alligators than maybe a lot of scientists who have PhDs studying this.
Well, there is definitely, let's see, there are some hurdles with the zoo and animal park community and the scientific community. There are always that, right? Like different strokes. But I think I've done a pretty good job of kind of merging those two. I mean, there are some things I see in our park every day that if you read a book on alligators or crocodiles, they would say, this is absolutely not true. This could never happen, blah, blah, blah. But if I see it, like,
right.
I don't know.
I'm curious. Over the years, I've interviewed a lot of people who are animal trainers with zoos or circuses or movies, who mostly work with mammals. And, you always talk about, whether it's a cat or an elephant, they always talk about it's got a personality. It's got emotional states. do you say the same about cold-blooded creatures? Do reptiles have personalities and emotional states the way we think of, maybe cats or horses?
So they absolutely have personalities, 100%. And I think even science would back up that statement. When it comes to emotion, I can't say because so science is going to tell you that no, like that they don't have emotions. I don't know that they necessarily have emotions, but I do know that they have good days and bad days. Sometimes they're interested in stuff and sometimes they're not. And sometimes they want to do stuff with us and sometimes they don't. So if you consider that emotional, like I see them get excited if you consider excitement and emotion. And it just depends. Like, they kind of match energy with you sometimes. So if you go in and you're quiet and you're not really like into what's going on, they're just going to kind of match that. But if you go in and you're super excited and, you're talking loud to them and you're very animated, they seem to behave in the same way. So I don't know what science would consider that, but I consider it, if not emotional, definitely moody.
That's really interesting. I've got tons more questions for you, but I want to jump into our comments because we've got some folks with some things to say. Celista Robinson wanted to say that you are one of the coolest people ever. You do huge things for Gatorland and for the people. Savannah is so awesome and a go-getter, and she strives to be like that in every way. And Kayla Pugh also says that you are her hero and inspiration.
I love you, Kayla.
And David Sutton had a question. I did not know about this. Apparently, there was a theme park called Bible Land that was built even before Gatorland, right next to Gatorland. Have you ever heard of any remnants or any remainders? Does anyone of the staff there still remember Bible Land?
I haven't personally heard of Bible Land.
I remember that one.
Holy Land. And then
Holy Land Experience I remember. But,
wasn't there like one called Splendid China as well?
Oh, yes. Splendid China. I think that is where the Margaritaville Resort is now.
Okay.
There's a whole history of lost things. They finally tore down the Mystery Fun House. Do you remember that?
Xanadu.
I remember Xanadu. House of the Future.
Okay, tell me if you ever heard of this one, because this is one I went to just recently. It is abandoned in Florida, but the Cypress Knee Museum.
No. Oh, that's a deep cut. Wow.
So there's a Cypress Knee Museum. I think it's in Palmdale, where this guy collected all these cypress knees, and he kind of like cypress knees. If you don't know what those are, depending on where they're kind of like the roots that grow up in the air so that the cypress trees can breathe. So they're kind of like snorkels. But sometimes, like, let's say somebody put a glass bottle and the glass bottle is there, and then the cypress knee will grow around it. So this guy had all these amazing cypress knees in this museum, and I guess someone broke in and stole all his best ones, and he had to end up closing it down. But it's still there. Oh, it's still there. So just I went abandoned there.
Ooh, you were doing some urban exploring or
I
suburban
love exploring.
Well, I don't want you to out yourself to the cops, but have you been any other neat places like that?
I was in Xanadu, Home of the Future, but the cops actually came and made me leave right before it got torn down, which was just an incredible place. Like, it's such a shame it's not there anymore, you know?
This is a whole nother side of you. I did not know. We have to hook you up with the Bright Suns Films guys who do all the explore abandoned malls and theme parks and stuff.
Well, if you
go do a documentary with them.
Well, I go out looking for like snakes and lizards and whatever you can find in Florida, because Florida has so many invasive species, which you can say for or not for, whatever you say, they're here to stay. When I go out looking for these things, and sometimes I pop up in these weird spots where I'm like, whoa, this used to be this.
That's amazing. So speaking of popping up in weird spots, I know as the ambassador from Gatorland, you get to take some of the residents outside of Gatorland for various events. I know
Yes.
I saw you a while back at the premiere of the movie Crawl, holding a
Yes.
baby gator in a movie theater.
Yeah.
What are some of the unique or interesting places that you've taken these creatures, or experiences that you've had taking them out into the world?
So taking it to a movie premiere was pretty great, especially since it was an alligator movie. We got to walk the red carpet, and I got to have a little alligator there with me, so that was amazing. I took one time we did. I went to Beer Fest, like the weekly did Beer Fest, and I took a little baby
Yes.
alligator. And it was cold with,
Oh.
there, but he was a teeny little guy. And the most interesting question that I got at Beer Fest,
Mm.
and it was this over and over again. Hey, don't you think he's cold out here? And my answer to that is, hey, did you know they live outside?
They don't usually
And
have heated houses to go home to.
right. So that was kind of a fun day. And it may have had something to do with it being at Beer Fest, but either way.
Yeah, the beer probably contributed to the dumb question. Well, you've answered so much, and I feel like we could keep going on, but what I really wanted to talk to you about was your mission of advocacy for these creatures. We have a big impact. Those of us who live in Central Florida, our lifestyle impacts their wild environment. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about folks who are listening to this, especially those who live here in Florida. What are things that we should be doing and could be doing to support the work that you do?
Well, I'm not guessing that development's going to slow down anytime soon.
Probably not.
And to be fair, that's part of the issue, So Gatorland Global and Gatorland Global is our conservation arm, but we have a program in place. So let's say you're an alligator and you lived in the same pond for 50 years, 60 years, nobody ever bothered you. You didn't bother anybody. Everything was fine and your life was great. Well, all of a sudden you're surrounded by some really, really big apartment complex, right? So you were here first, and we get all that. But what happens is when people come, it's not so much the Floridians, people that are from Florida or people that have lived here for a long time, they love to see a big alligator swimming by. And as long as you don't feed it, then it very rarely becomes an issue. But people from other states that come to Florida, or new coming to Florida or visiting Florida, you can't feed wild alligators. It's against the law. If you do it, that's where the problems start. Big alligators like that, we love to take in. If the trapper wants to work with us, we're happy to bring them in. But basically, I feel like it's common sense, but I'll say it anyways. Don't go near the water's edge with your pets. Look for signs. If the sign says alligators are in there, just assume alligators are in there. You don't need to go around the sign and check for yourself. Like if there's a sign there, someone's already done the work for you. So just,
I've always said that any puddle of water deeper than an inch in Florida might have an alligator. Just assume that, especially you're out walking your dog. Don't walk your dog along the water's edge, no matter, if it's deeper than
because
a
the dog is the size of like a raccoon, and that's a natural prey for an alligator. We've had a lot of alligator issues this year in the state of Florida. And I think it's probably because it's heating up so much faster than it normally does. Like it's been so hot already in February, getting into March now, and, breeding season might be starting a little early because of that. So everybody just needs to be really careful. Pay attention to your surroundings. Look for slides. Like if you walk down to the water and you see something like this, where something's been coming in and out, chances are it could be an alligator. Like if you see a big mound somewhere, or if you see hatchlings somewhere, stay away from it, because there's probably a mom nearby.
So if you live here in Florida, maybe you're new to the area, and you wake up and go into your backyard or go out to your pool, and you've got a gator swimming around in it, who you gonna call?
FWC. Don't call us, because we can't do anything.
All right, that's good to know. So do you guys get phone calls? People calling the park saying, "Hey, I've got a gator."
Day. Yeah, and I appreciate it because that just means that Gatorland is synonymous with alligators.
Hmm.
But these alligators that are in these areas, the way that it's set up in the state of Florida is a trapper will get a sign. The trapper goes to trap the alligator. The trapper has various choices in what he can do with the alligator. He could keep it himself, euthanize it, sell off meat and hide. He could sell it to a hunting camp. He could sell it to a farm, or he could bring it to Gatorland. If he brings it to Gatorland, we pay a little bit more than what these other places would pay. So with the hopes that we get more alligators. Not that we can take them all, but again, like if it's an alligator that's been minding its own business, and since the tragedy earlier this year with the old lady and the alligator, like people are calling in every single alligator they see, and every single alligator you see is not a nuisance alligator. Just like let them do their thing, let them swim away, take pictures from afar, like just don't bother them.
For sure. That's really, really great advice. What kind of events or projects do you have coming up that people can get involved with or should be looking forward to?
So my last trip was in January, and that was to Jamaica. So we work with the people that are in Jamaica. We work with a sanctuary called the Holland Bay Jam Croc Sanctuary, which is a sanctuary for crocodiles in Jamaica. So I was there in January. We did health assessments of a bunch of animals, and those animals will be released back into Jamaica because their population is declining. And then in April, so at Gatorland right now, we just got a new splash park, and we have a croc rock. So we have this huge rock that you can climb to the top of. Once you get to the top of the rock, you get to go over a suspension bridge, and you get to go on a zip line. So it's a crazy thing. I still can't get to the top of it yet.
Is this something for adults and kids?
Yeah, for adults and kids. Yeah,
and
so it's a lot of fun.
Is this part of the park, or is this like the zip line that's an extra charge?
It's an extra charge. I'm not sure how much it is, but it's like a 3-in-1 sort of package.
Cool.
So you climb the rock, get to the top, go to the other side, walk the suspension bridge, and then zip line at the end of it. So it's like a partial zip line, but you also got this big rock to climb. I wish I could get to the top of the rock, but I get scared halfway up there because it's too high.
Are you do you have a safety line or anything?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, it'll be fine. What's the worst thing?
I mean, the most fun is when you can't make it and you jump off. So
yeah. And then it's just embarrassing, but you're not going to get hurt.
But I am going to South Africa as part of our conservation effort. I'm going to South Africa mid-April. And I'm going to do some really neat things that I never thought I'd find myself doing. I'm going to a rhino orphanage to talk with some people there that are saving baby rhinos because their parents have been poached for their horns. We may or may not do some rhino dehorning. If you don't know what that is, it's where they cut the rhino's horn off because the horn is the only thing that the poachers think is of value to them. So if they don't have a horn, chances are they get to live a longer life. We're collaring some lionesses for tracking purposes, and doing something with elephants. I'm not quite sure yet. And then we're walking pangolin. If you don't know what a pangolin is, it's like this little teeny, it looks like a gigantic roly-poly. And it's one of the most trafficked animals in the world. So when they have babies, you have to walk them and teach them how to catch their own food. Right? Like you can't hold them and feed them. You got to walk them so they learn. And so we're going to do some of that, but it's going to be the trip of a lifetime. I'm very, and of course I'm going to see some big crocodiles.
That sounds incredible. I know that you've done a lot of stuff streaming on social media and, live on Facebook. Are people going to be able to follow any of your adventure online?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The thing
Where can they find you?
So you can find me at Savannah Boan on Instagram, on TikTok. Our YouTube channel is called Gatorland Vlogs. And that YouTube channel, if you just go subscribe to that YouTube channel, all the money from that channel goes to all of these projects we're working on. All the money from all of our social media goes to all of these projects we're working on. So anybody that subscribes or follows us, if you follow Gatorland, it's at Gatorland_Orlando. We're always doing great stuff. We're always out in our community as well as communities throughout the world.
That's wonderful. Well, this has been a really fantastic interview. I want to thank you so much for your
Thanks.
time. Before we wrap it up, is there anything else that you would like to tell folks or say to your fans? We have, the feedback in our chat, in our comments are great. Uh, People say, they can't wait to see your vlogs from South Africa. Thanks to you, folks are advocates for alligator and crocodile conservation, which is a great thing to hear.
And that's what it is. It's just love. Like, I love that animal, and hopefully people that love me will love these animals. And be safe this year in Florida. Like, be careful out there. Pay attention to your surroundings. I can't say that enough. Watch where you're walking, watch where you're swimming. Like, don't take your dogs to the water's edge. Like, just be smart about it. And, because this year it's been a lot different than in the past few years. So everybody needs to be really, really careful and use a lot of caution this year.
Absolutely. Savannah, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to you. Thank you to Gatorland for sharing you with us today. Before I go, it is time for us to hear a brief word from our sponsor.
The Attractions Podcast is brought to you by MEI and MEI-Travel. Whether your next vacation is a magical trip to the theme parks, an exciting adventure to the pyramids of Egypt, or just a relaxing cruise on the turquoise waters of the Bahamas, MEI-Travel provides premium service and expert advice to help you get the most of your vacation. They are always free of any hidden fees or costs to you. Visit them at mei-travel.com.
Okay, once again, I want to thank you for joining us for this very special bonus episode of the podcast, this interview with Savannah Boan from Gatorland. Thank you to MEI and MEI-Travel. I want to remind everyone, as always, to please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and a rating on Spotify. If you want to find more coverage from us and Attractions Magazine, you can find me at the UG Series on Twitter, at the Unofficial Guides on Instagram, and at theunofficialguides.com. And as always, the whole Attractions team is here for you at attractionsmagazine.com, at Attractions on Twitter, at Attractions on Instagram, youtube.com/attractionsmagazine, and at Attractions on TikTok.
That's a mouthful.
Is it? One of these days I'm going to memorize it all instead of having to read it.
What you should do is just say, go to our link tree.
Link tree. Thank you so much, Savannah. This has been great. We should have you back sometime. Maybe we can do something live with you in person.
Oh, that'd be great.
You can introduce you to some of our friends.
We have a big event coming up for the Florida Man Challenge. So maybe you should come out to that.
That sounds great. We will definitely talk about that. And until next time, we hope that you folks stay safe, try something new, but most importantly, have fun. And we'll see you again. Bye.